When the new city of Birmingham was founded in 1871 in Jefferson County, Alabama, it was because it was centrally located within a region of the state that held an untapped abundance of essential raw materials that would go into the creation of pig iron and later steel, those being iron ore, coal, and limestone. All of these raw minerals were located in close proximity to the numerous blast furnaces that would be erected in the area of Jones Valley where Birmingham was located. All of the mines and furnaces would be connected by a vast rail network built by numerous railroad companies that would operate in the district over the many decades to come. Sometimes often overlooked by the furnaces and the mining that dominated the district were the rich deposits of what was termed as fire clay, lime, sand, magnesia, and iron oxide. Shelby County, to the southeast of Birmingham, had and still does numerous lime plants. In neighboring Tuscaloosa and Bibb counties, in addition to vast coal and brown ore fields, held numerous areas of fire clay deposits, which several brick companies operated their own clay pits in these counties. Other counties surrounding Birmingham supplied high quality pressed molded sand that was shipped by rail to area brick plants in the Birmingham district. As a result of extensive geological reports of the region surrounding Birmingham, it was determined that the manufacturing of all types of bricks and clay products could be produced in mass quantities. The creation of brick plants in the district would become highly essential for the construction of new buildings, homes, and streets for the growing city. In the course of many decades, from numerous brick manufacturing companies within the Birmingham district, millions of tons of all types of bricks would be produced and used not only in the Birmingham district, but would be exported throughout the southern United States for use in other states and cities, along with many parts of the world. The Alabama fire clay itself would be purchased by other brick manufacturing companies outside the state for the production of their own bricks. As with the coal and ore mining properties changing hands to different owners in the early decades of Birmingham's growth, so did many brick manufacturing plants change ownerships as well. The following presentation represents many of the prominent brick manufacturing companies that had plants as well as some that had their own coal mines that operated during the early years in the Birmingham district on into the 1950s. The Bessemer Fire Brick Company began operations in 1887 by Henry F. de Bartleben, who was the founder of the city of Bessemer. The brick plant was situated along the main line of the Alabama Great Southern Railroad that operated the famous Queen and Crescent passenger line, which in later years would be absorbed into the Southern Railway system. De Bartleben would later sell the Bessemer Fire Brick Company to the Miner brothers, whom had arrived years earlier in Alabama from Pennsylvania with specialties in engineering and coke oven construction. In 1898, the Miner brothers formed the Ensley Brick Company on land purchased from the Ensley Land Company near the ever-growing blast furnaces of the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company. The opening of a new brick plant in Ensley would prove very prosperous for supplying paving and building brick for the growth of the new industrial area of the Birmingham district. Eventually, the Ensley Brick Company would be absorbed into the Bessemer Fire Brick Company and became known as the Ensley plant. In addition to supplying paving block bricks for the ever-expanding industrial city of Ensley, was the supplying of an untold number of common type bricks for the increased expansion of the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company's Ensley blast furnace and open hearth mill that was located directly north of the brick plant across the rail lines. The Ensley brick plant, along with the Bessemer plant, would supply the building bricks for the construction of power plants, steam plants, machine shops, plant office buildings, medical offices, bathhouses, commissary, repair shops, etc. The number of bricks used was in the millions. TCI also contracted with the company for a large consignment of bricks for the construction of surface facilities and employee housing at their three ore mining divisions that were situated along Red Mountain, located at Iscuda, Winona, and Muscoda. Along with other Birmingham District brick companies, the Ensley and Bessemer brick plants would also be contracted by TCI, a division of the United States Steel Corporation, to supply a large number of bricks for the construction of three model coal mining villages, those being Edgewater, Docena, and Bayview. In 1920, the Alabama Clay Products Company purchased the Bessemer Fire Brick Company, which included both the plants at Bessemer and Ensley. Shortly after the purchase, the Ensley plant was leased for several years to the Birmingham Hollow Tile Company for the production of new types of clay bricks that they were marketing for residential and commercial building construction. In 1923, the Alabama Clay Products Company would completely overhaul and modernize their Bessemer plant by replacing the steam power plant with individual electric motor drives. This became necessary to double production of their Excelsior type brick, which was in high demand at that time. The steam heated dryers were also replaced by way of a waste heat drying method. The 14 large diameter brick kilns would be connected to this new drying process that were formerly heated using steam. The plant renovation was completed by 1925, which resulted in higher production along with better qualities of brick and decreased production cost. After the Birmingham Hollow Tile Company's lease had expired, the company restarted brick production at its Ensley plant for a number of years before ceasing operations. The company's Bessemer plant would stay in operation, producing their popular Excelsior brick along with other brands for commercial and residential use. The Bessemer plant would finally cease operations sometime in the 1950s after being open for over 60 years. The Harbison-Walker Refractory Company was headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The company, which was founded in 1875, had close business ties with Carnegie Steel, and later with that of United States Steel Corporation after its acquisition of Carnegie. In 1907, U.S. Steel, led by New York financier J.P. Morgan, acquired the Birmingham-based Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company. Shortly after the acquisition, U.S. Steel spent tens of millions of dollars in the Birmingham district upgrading and enlarging blast furnaces and its various mines. Under the term later referred to as welfare capitalism, U.S. Steel planned and built model mining camps to better the lives and living conditions of their employees. The largest planned industrial city became located 15 miles southwest of Birmingham. Originally named Corry after William Ellis Corry, who was president of Carnegie Steel and later became the first president of U.S. Steel. Later, the planned industrial's name of Corry was changed to that of Fairfield. Harbison-Walker, looking to expand their brickmaking refractories, received generous offers of development from the Corry Land Company to build a new state-of-the-art brick refractory at Corry, later to be named Fairfield. The location of the new plant was situated between Corry/Fairfield and the industrial town of Wylam. The new refractory plant opened in early 1910 with several hundred workmen being employed. Numerous homes for employees were built adjacent to the brick plant. Harbison-Walker would eventually open two sandstone quarries outside of Birmingham, located at Oxford in Calhoun County and at Rock Run in Cherokee County. Both quarries would be serviced by the Southern Railway, transporting the material back to Birmingham. Harbison-Walker would receive large contracts from TCI to supply several million bricks for the construction of their Fairfield Works and affiliated plants, and also their Fairfield Employee Village. Bricks from the Harbison-Walker plant would also be used for the numerous buildings being constructed in the growth of the city of Fairfield. In 1923, Harbison-Walker began construction on a new refractory plant in Bessemer that would be located just north of the Pullman Standard Railcar plant. The new refractory site would eventually cover 10 square city blocks and cost over $600,000 to build. While the facilities were being built, new spur rail lines were laid. The new refractory plant would be serviced by multiple railroad companies that included Southern Railway, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, and the Birmingham Southern Railroad. When the plant opened in September of 1924, it became one of the largest refractories of its kind in the South. Over 300 men would be employed to work at the new plant. The Harbison-Walker Bessemer plant stayed in operation for many decades before shutting down. The Harbison-Walker Fairfield plant stayed in continuous operation, specializing in silica-type bricks for industrial use, where they would become the largest producer in the world of silica brick. The Fairfield plant underwent several upgrades and modifications in the 1950s and 1960s to increase production and produce different types of high-temperature bricks. Harbison-Walker International kept their Fairfield plant operating up to 2019 when it closed down. In January of 2022, the company decided to reopen some of its facilities at Fairfield to reestablish a southeastern network. The Watkins Brick Company was formed in 1925 in Birmingham by brothers Harry and Arthur Watkins. The location for their new plant would be less than a mile northwest of TCI's Ensley blast furnaces and mills. An excellent deposit of shale was also found to be nearby the plant site as well. The plant was eventually opened in late 1928 just off of Mulga Road. With no rail line connection, trucks would be used to transport finished bricks to local buyers or to the nearby railroad freight stations of the various railroads located at Ensley. On average, some 50 to 70 men were employed at the brick plant that was producing on average between 50 to 60,000 bricks per day. The company eventually began to specialize in what was then called acid-free resistant bricks, which were widely used by chemical and oil refineries around the country and the world. The largest customers were those that had oil refineries located in the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula. The The Watkins Brick Company stayed in continuous operation until its closing in 1986. The Copeland Brick Company was founded and incorporated in January 1900 by local Birmingham businessman John Randolph Copeland. With a working capital of $20,000, Mr. Copeland purchased acres of land for the construction of two brick plants to be built at Pratt City and East Birmingham. With excellent business contacts and good salesmanship, along with marketing, the Copeland Brick Company was able to secure several large contracts for finished bricks for the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company, along with contracts for street paving with various local cities. Between 1903 and 1906, the Pratt City brick plant location was beset by two separate fires that broke out on the property, destroying the buildings and equipment, causing extensive damage. The plant was eventually rebuilt along with the opening of a new brick plant that would be operating in Bessemer. The Pratt City plant of the Copeland Brick Company would stay in operation until 1911 when it ceased operations. During this period, Mr. Copeland would form a partnership with another Birmingham businessman, Company-Inglis, and other interested parties to form the Copeland-Inglis Shale Brick Company. A new modern brick plant was built at Alton to the northeast of Birmingham along the Seaboard Airline Railway. The Copeland Brick Company East Birmingham plant was situated along the Southern Railway line running from North Birmingham to Woodlawn and was serviced by a spur rail line. The plant was located just south of the Vanderbilt Furnace and the Louisville and Nashville's Boyles Rail Yard. A Bucyrus steam-operated shovel was employed working a soft clay pit near the brick plant. When the plant first opened, 3 square-up draft kilns were built to heat the dried bricks. Several years later, a large round draft kiln was erected to increase daily production. The East Birmingham plant stayed in operation for a number of years before shutting down. Thereafter, all brick production was handled at the newer Alton plant northeast of the city of Birmingham. In 1906, the Copeland-Inglis Shale Brick Company was incorporated. Mr. John Copeland, along with his partners, secured 400 acres of land that paralleled the Seaboard Airline Railway some 15 miles northeast of Birmingham. Geological surveys of the property revealed large areas of soft shale banks in which to operate a quarry near the new plant site. When the new plant opened in late 1908, it consisted of 5 large, state of the art brick kilns, along with large drying rooms. The plant had its own large boiler plant that generated electricity for daily operations. A large elevated spur-line trestle led from the main Seaboard Airline Railway to the coal dock, where weekly loads of rail cars would deposit coal into the bunkers to operate the boiler plant. The Alton plant immediately began processing large brick orders for customers in the Birmingham district and for out-of-state customers. A large Bucyrus steam-operated shovel was placed in operation at the shale quarry nearby. A small rail tramway line was installed to haul shale in minecarts to a central crusher, which ground down the shale for use at the brick plant. By 1914, the Alton plant was producing some 50,000 bricks daily. The Copeland-Inglis bricks became famous for their quality and endurance, with use in street and road paving. Many streets in Birmingham were originally paved using Copeland-Inglis bricks from Alton. In 1925, Mr. John Copeland retired from the brickmaking business and sold the plant to Messrs. J.F. Morgan and Wilburn Hill of the Russell Clay Manufacturing Company. The plant was shut down in 1928 for renovations and upgrading of equipment, and reopened in 1929 as the new Morgan Hill Shale Brick Company. In 1929, the company secured a contract with the state of Florida for an order of 15 million paving bricks for a new $1 million road project. During this time, some 150 men were employed working at the plant. The plant stayed in operation on into the mid-1930s when it was shut down. All equipment was removed and sold off and the buildings razed. The shale quarries, having been abandoned, eventually filled with water and became small lakes. Today, the brick plant site is part of an industrial area. The Birmingham Brick Company was formed in 1919 in Jefferson County with $2,000 in working capital. The brick plant was built in the southern area of the city of Ensley on the north side of Village Creek, paralleling the Atlanta, Birmingham, and Atlantic Railroad. A spur line was built by the AB&A to service the new brick plant. The Alabama State Fairgrounds were situated just north of the brick plant. The Birmingham brick plant stayed in operation for some 10 years before shutting down. In the early 1930s, the city of Birmingham undertook a massive project of rerouting areas of Valley Creek to limit the serious flooding that had been taking place in the growing southwestern section of the city. The location of where the Birmingham Brick Company plant was located was leveled during the Valley Creek project. Today, a trailer park sits where the brick plant once stood. Birmingham Fire Bricks Works was formed in 1880 by famed Alabama industrialist Henry F. de Bartoleben. It was one of the earliest, if not the first, major brick manufacturing plants to operate within the Birmingham district. The plant was situated along the Alabama Great Southern Railroad in the Central Rail Corridor area of Birmingham. Bartleben would also open the Mary Pratt furnace in 1883 along the north side of the rail corridor directly across from the Birmingham Fireworks brick plant. The Slough City furnace was also located just southwest of the Birmingham Fireworks brick plant. In 1883 to 1884, with the arrival of the Georgia Pacific Railway into Birmingham, they set up their shops in Roundhouse, just south of the fireworks brick plant. De Bartleben's brickworks began producing on a steady scale with various orders being filled for commercial and residential customers. One of the biggest contracts came in 1890 to supply bricks for the construction of the Pioneer Mining and Manufacturing Company's new Thomas Blast furnace that would be built several miles southwest of Birmingham near Pratt City. By the late 1890s, the Birmingham Fire Bricks Works had expanded their line of products being produced to include all types of clay fire potteries, stoneware, and pipes. By 1892, Birmingham Fireworks was shipping between 1 to 2 million bricks per month out of their plant. The plant was closed thereafter for 2 years due to an oversupply of available bricks in the district and in also the southeast. It reopened in the late 1890s after upgrading equipment and facilities. The plant operated up to somewhere around 1920 or so before permanently shutting down. The Robertson Brick Company was initially formed in 1890 in Birmingham. The brick plant was originally built and operated in the eastern section of Birmingham at 39th Street along the Columbus and Western Railroad line near Avondale. The Robertson bricks were widely used in the Birmingham district along with the building of the new City Hall. In 1910, the Robertson Brick Company was reformed and incorporated. The company established a new brick plant site and main office near the Alice Furnace at Avenue B and 6th Street South, situated along the Birmingham Rail Corridor. 4 square brick kilns were constructed along with separate drying rooms. Finished brick was shipped to customers via wagons and later trucks. The streetcar freight line system was also utilized due to its vast transportation network within the Birmingham district. The Robertson Brick Company stayed in operation until 1930 when it went out of business. The Jefferson Press Brickworks was located along the Birmingham Rail Corridor between 29th and 31st Streets on the south side of the Georgia Pacific Railway line. The plant was opened sometime in the mid 1880s, manufacturing common and stock brick. The plant stayed in continuous operation manufacturing bricks for commercial and residential use. No date is given for when the company ceased operations. The Frank B. Daniels Brickworks was situated along the Birmingham Rail Corridor at 39th Street and First Avenue North. The plant opened sometime in the early 1900s. Not much information is available on this company or the type of bricks it manufactured. Records indicate that the company ceased operations sometime around 1910 to 1911. The Z.T. Mozeley Brick Company was situated along the Birmingham Rail Corridor in the area of North Avondale. The plant was located along 41st Street North, in between the Southern Railway and Central of Georgia Railway lines. The Mozeley Brick Plant began operations by 1900, producing both standard and common brick for commercial and residential construction. The plant was serviced by a spur line of the Southern Railway. Not much more information exists on this company, only that it operated up to around 1920 before shutting down. One distinct advantage the Birmingham district had was the enormous availability of raw minerals that went into the building of the city and outlying areas. As a result, the district was able to utilize these minerals to construct the tall buildings of the city, along with the beautiful neighborhoods and paved streets of brick, cement, and slag, which was a byproduct of the blast furnaces from the district. Just about all of the buildings and homes within the district that were designed using bricks of all types manufactured came from the Birmingham region. The Southern Sewer and Pipe Company was formed and incorporated in Birmingham, Alabama in April 1902. The location of the plant site was situated in North Birmingham between 26th Avenue and 29th Avenue North and in between 14th Street and 17th Street North. The new plant location sat in between the Louisville and Nashville Railroad and the Southern Railroad main lines, along with the intercity line of the Birmingham Belt Railroad. Various spur lines would be built to provide rail service to and from the plant. Shortly after the plant opened in 1903, a fire broke out, destroying several buildings and kilns, along with valuable pipe-making machinery. This would be the first of 3 fires that over the following years would cause much damage to the facilities, resulting in extensive rebuilding of the plant. The Southern Sewer and Pipe Works would eventually start filling huge orders for their ceramic pipes to be used throughout the South. By 1910, there were 22 large round kilns operating at the plant. The main building, after being repaired from the first fire, was 3 stories high and a half a block long. Some of the biggest contracts for ceramic pipe were placed by cities all across the South, including Birmingham, for the building of sewer pipelines. In the case of Birmingham, the entire sewage line paralleling Village Creek was built using ceramic pipes from the North Birmingham plant. In 1914 and again in 1918, the Southern Sewer and Pipe Works plant in North Birmingham was beset by extensive fires that caused damage to the buildings and equipment. After lengthy repairs from the 1918 fire, the plant was up and operating at full capacity by 1921. The plant stayed in full operation throughout the Depression years of the 1930s and reached maximum capacity during the 1940s with the outbreak of America's entry into World War II. During the post-war years of the late 1940s and on into the 1950s, the Southern Sewer and Pipe Works plant stayed in continuous operation, employing some 150 men full-time. By 1958, though, the plant had ceased operations, and by 1960, the buildings and kilns had been razed. The North Birmingham Fire Brick and Proofing Company was organized and incorporated in July 1904. The new company had acquired the existing plant of the North Birmingham Brick and Tile Company, which was situated between a main line of Southern Railway and the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Graves Shale Brick and Coal Mine branch line. Adjacent to the property was a 7-acre parcel containing fine qualities of clay for use at the brick plant. The existing plant contained excellent machinery and several large round kilns, along with hollow tile making machines. The plant had a capacity for producing 20,000 bricks per day. Both Southern and L&N had built separate rail spur lines to the plant. An elevated rail stock trestle had been built for the rail cars to deposit loads of sand and clay for the manufacturing of the brick and tile. Additional large round brick kilns were constructed, bringing the total to 7 in use at the plant. For a number of years, the North Birmingham Fire Brick Plant was the only plant in the Southeast to produce fireproof hollow tile for commercial and residential use, which was at that time a revolutionary process in brick design. Over the following years, the company was awarded large contracts for hollow tile that was used in constructing many of Birmingham's large buildings and beautiful homes within the district. Large orders of fireproof hollow tile were shipped from the North Birmingham plant to customers all over the Southeast, with some of the largest shipments by rail going to Atlanta, Georgia. By 1914, the company embarked on the production of particular hollow clay tiles for the building of silos for the storing of grains and for feeding cattle. Building clay storage silos had never been considered before this, and it became enormously profitable for expanding business and trade in the Southeast. In 1916, 3 Birmingham businessmen formed and incorporated the Roper-Strauss and Ferst Company for the manufacturing of clay and shale products. With working capital of $125,000, they acquired the North Birmingham Fire Brick and Proofing Company along with the plant. By the end of 1917, Roper, Strauss, and Ferst began to expand operations by building new facilities and kilns to produce fire clay bricks in addition to their hollow clay tile plant. By 1921, the Roper, Strauss, and Ferst Company was heavily promoting their terracotta and hollow tile line for residential home construction. The most well-known use of their tiles came with the contract to supply terracotta and hollow tiles for the interior and exterior construction of the new Louis Pizitz department store building in downtown Birmingham in 1923. In 2000, the Pizitz building was certified by the National Park Service as an historic Birmingham landmark. The building was later restored and converted for residential use. In January 1924, the Roper-Strauss and Ferst Company changed its name to the Vulcan Tile and Brick Company. By 1925, several of the older brick kilns had been torn down and newer ones built in their place. The plant had become completely electrically operated to increase daily output of brick production. Vulcan Tile and Brick stayed in continuous operation on into the 1960s when the plant finally closed down. Some years later, the facilities, along with the brick kilns, were razed after all of the equipment and machinery had been removed. The McMillan Clay Products Company was formed and incorporated in June 1926 in Birmingham, Alabama. The principal owners were Dr. Daniel McMillan of Hillman Hospital and Birmingham real estate developer Mr. J.H. Berry. With working capital of $150,000, 137 acres were purchased just north of Republic Iron and Steel Company's Saraton No. 1 coal mine. Much of the purchased property contained fine shale that would be used in the production of bricks. The plant was located alongside one of Southern Railway's main rail lines leading into Birmingham. 8 30-foot round draft kilns were built along with the installation of the latest brick-making machinery. The shale bank being excavated was located directly behind the plant. A long electrically operated conveyor belt carried the excavated shale to the plant. Southern Railway built 2 rail sidings from their main line to service the new brick plant. The McMillan Clay Products brick plant was opened in February 1927 with the capacity of producing some 50,000 bricks per day. With quality management and sales staff, the McMillan Company secured lucrative contracts for new commercial and residential projects throughout the Birmingham district. In 1928, the Birmingham Clay Products Company, which had years before succeeded the Sibley-Menge Brick Company, purchased the McMillan Clay Products Company that also included the North Birmingham Brick Plant along with its facilities and property. With completion of the purchases, the Birmingham Clay Products Company enlarged the North Birmingham plant by building several more brick kilns. When the Birmingham Clay Products Company closed down their brick plant in Sibleyville, north of Warrior, in the 1950s, they continued to operate the North Birmingham plant up to 1981 when it was finally closed down and the company was dissolved. The Graves Shale Brick Company was founded by Birmingham real estate businessman Captain William H. Graves. With Birmingham's meteoric rise as the major industrial center of the South and dramatic population growth, Mr. Graves saw an opportunity in combining his real estate ventures with also starting a brick-making business for increase in construction and street paving projects within the Birmingham district and also throughout the state of Alabama. That in 1900 he formed the Graves Shale Brick Company in Birmingham. Mr. Graves purchased 343 acres of tract 5 miles north of the city, adjacent to Lewisburg, just southwest of the Mary Lee coal mine. Excellent banks of shale and clay were found to be on the property near where his brick plant was to be built. Another important factor with the property was access to the Mary Lee coal seam that averaged between 6 to 8 feet in thickness. Southern Railway was originally contracted to build a switch track to the new brick plant from their main line operating between Birmingham and Greenville, Mississippi. When the new plant opened in 1901, there were 3 square kilns operating with drying kilns and brick-making machines. The clay and shale pits were connected to the plant by a series of small rail lines to an inclined tramway that pulled up by cable hoist loaded shale and clay carts to the top of the incline, whereby they were tipped over and deposited into holding bins at the plant. The coal mine was developed and contracted out to C.E. Buick and Company to operate. The extracted coal from the Graves mine would be used to provide power throughout its boiler plants, converted to electricity to power the machinery at the brick plant. The remainder of the coal was sold on the open market. Over the years, several companies would operate the Graves coal mine on a contract basis from the Graves Company, such as the Southern Steel Company, Gulf State Steel, and the Hoskins Mining Company. One of the first new buildings that would be constructed using the Graves shale brick was the 4-story Graves building located at 1829 3rd Avenue North, directly across the street from the current Alabama Theater. The Graves building is still standing and in use to this day. In 1904, an additional 4 round draft kilns were built to keep up with the increasing orders being placed. Some 60 men were employed at the brick plant, producing some 40 to 50,000 bricks per day. The high quality of the red shale brick coming from the Graves plant became much in demand throughout the Birmingham district and the state of Alabama. By 1904, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Birmingham Mineral Division built an almost 3-mile branch line extending from its Huntsville No. 1 branch line, connecting to its Boyles Rail Yard located at Tarrant. Southern Railway would eventually discontinue service to the Graves brick plant and coal mine, leaving L&N as the only rail service provider. During the following years, the Graves shale brick and block became widely purchased by the city of Birmingham and other Alabama cities for paving streets. So much in demand was the Graves shale bricks for laying streets that the company's name was changed to the Graves Shale Brick and Paving Company. Many of Birmingham's streets and newly built neighborhoods were built using Graves shale block bricks. The Graves plant also began producing and selling acid-free chemical bricks for industrial use, which became heavily purchased by various industries in the Birmingham district and across the southeast. By 1916, Captain Graves, wishing to retire from the brick-making business, sold his company to the Southern Clay Manufacturing Company, which had brick plants operating at Robbins, Tennessee, and Coaldale, near Warrior, Alabama. The purchase price, in excess of $100,000 in 1916, is roughly $3 million present day. The Southern Clay Manufacturing Company continued to operate the Graves brick plant and leased out the coal mine for a number of years before closing down sometime in the late 1930s. For a number of years, the shale and clay pits at Graves were operated by various companies on lease from Southern Clay Manufacturing. The site of the Graves brick plant and coal mine was eventually cleared to make way for the construction of present-day Interstate 65. In 1887, brothers John W. Sibley and W.C. Sibley formed the Coaldale Brick and Mining Company in Jefferson County, Alabama, with the initial working capital of $100,000. The Sibley brothers had formed the Warrior Coal and Coke Company in 1882 and were operating several coal drift mines east of the town of Warrior, located some 30 miles north of Birmingham in Jefferson County. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad's South and North Alabama Division had built a branch line from Littleton, just north of the town of Warrior, off of their main line to service the Sibley Brothers coal mines. The coal drift mines at the time were operating on the Black Creek coal seam, averaging 2 to 3 feet in thickness. The Warrior Coal and Coke Company had amassed some 10,000 acres that had stretched into neighboring Blount County, located to the east. Located on the property were fine deposits of blue, gray, and red shale that, when properly processed, would make excellent forms of shale paving brick. The Sibley brothers decided to develop the first shale brick plant near the coal mines that would later be renamed the area of Coaldale. Several square kilns, drying rooms, along with a boiler plant and the latest brick-making machinery were installed. At least 10 coke ovens were also built next to the brick plant as well. A shale pit was opened directly behind the plant. Coal from its nearby mines, along with water from Hoagland Creek that was adjacent to the plant, would provide steam power converted through the boiler plant for electricity. When the plant was up and running by September 1887, it was producing some 25 to 30,000 bricks per day. After a few years in operation, it ran into undetermined financial difficulties and had to shut down. In 1890, John W. Sibley formed the new Coaldale Brick and Tile Company and managed to purchase back the property and buildings on site. After rehabilitating the brick plant with new machinery, it was up and running by 1892. The new Coaldale Brick and Tile Company began securing contracts with cities such as Birmingham and Montgomery to use their high-quality paving bricks for new streets and roads. One type of brick, called the Jefferson paver, was widely marketed and used as the best quality for street pavement. Various types of clay and terracotta tiles were also marketed and sold for commercial and residential use. By 1899, with the majority of their bricks being used for pavement of new and existing city streets, the Coaldale Brick and Tile Company changed their name to the Coaldale Brick and Paving Company. By 1900, the plant was producing on average some 30,000 bricks per day. In September 1901, a fire broke out at the Coaldale Brick Plant, causing much damage to the buildings and machinery, causing it to be closed for some months while repairs took place. With plenty of produce bricks as backstock, the fire did not hinder sale and contract requirements to the customers. By January 1902, the plant was rebuilt and fully operational. In September of 1902, without much fanfare, the Southern Clay Manufacturing Company of Tennessee, seeking to enter the Birmingham market, purchased the deed to the Coaldale Brick and Paving Company's property, which included the existing brick plant and coal mines. The company operated the Coaldale plant mines on lease until 1905, when they officially purchased the plant and property from the Sibley brothers. John W. Sibley and his brother had recently established a new location a mile north of the existing Coaldale plant along L&N's Linton branch line, on which to build their new brick plant. Named Sibleyville, this new brick plant would be opened in 1906. Birmingham businessman Joseph Menge, who was from New Orleans and one of the men who had formed Birmingham-based Southern Sewer and Pipe Company, joined up with the Sibley brothers and established the Sibley-Menge Press Brick Company. While the new brick plant at Sibleyville was being constructed, several new coal mines operated by the Sibley Brothers Coal Company nearby at Langley, Hoagland Creek, and Mabel were also opened. These drift mines operating on the Black Creek seam were found to contain rich deposits of fire clay located just beneath the coal seam. Extracted coal and fire clay from these mines would be transported by rail back to the brick plant, with the remainder being sold on the open market as needed. The new Sibley-Menge brick plant opened in October 1906 with an expected daily output between 50 to 100,000 bricks. A large shale pit located near the plant would supply as much clay shale as needed to produce all types of bricks the company was then marketing. A steam shovel would later be employed to work the ever expanding shale pit. A new commissary, medical office, schools, and dozens of workers' homes were built at Sibleyville. L&N had also built rail sidings off of their main branch line to service the new brick plant. Over the following years, the many types of bricks being produced at the Sibleyville plant would contribute to the construction of 20 of the most prominent buildings that were erected in downtown Birmingham. Two of the most well-known were the Empire and Brown Marks buildings, located on opposite sides of First Avenue North and 20th Street, that would come to be called the heaviest corner on earth. In 1910, the Sibley-Menge Press Brick Company and Sibley Brothers Coal Company were merged to form the Sibley-Menge Brick and Coal Company. The brick plant was enlarged further to expand their product line with all manner of bricks to be used for commercial and residential development. The remodeled plant was officially opened in November 1911 with an expected capacity of 1 million bricks per month being produced. At this time, the Sibley-Menge Brick and Coal Company was the largest brick producer in the Southeast. John W. Sibley, who was president of the company, had also been serving as secretary-treasurer of the National Brick Manufacturers Association for 20 years, was very influential in promoting the Birmingham district as the nation's leading brick manufacturing center. By all accounts, the company operated successfully for a number of years, shipping bricks to customers all over the Southeast. However, by the spring of 1913, the Sibley-Menge Brick and Coal Company began experiencing severe financial problems and was forced to declare bankruptcy and go into court receivership. A court-appointed trustee was placed in charge of operating the company and managing its daily affairs while the court received bids from prospective buyers. In 1917, after several years in court receivership, the recently formed and incorporated Birmingham Clay Products Company purchased the Sibley-Menge brick plant, coal mines, and property, with John W. Sibley being hired on as general sales manager of the new company. The Southern Clay Manufacturing Company continued to operate their Coaldale brick plant and mines, in addition to the Gray's brick plant near Lewisburg, which they had purchased in 1916. The company was very successful over the years in securing street paving contracts for their type paving bricks being produced at the Coaldale and Gray's brick plants. For a number of years, large contracts were secured with the states of Georgia and Florida for street and highway paving projects. Not much information or photos are available on the workings of the Coaldale plant after the purchase from the Sibley brothers. There were two large shale pits located just to the west behind the plant. A large steam shovel was employed for excavating shale to be used for brick making at the Coaldale plant. The mines at Coaldale continued to be operated on site near the brick plant, with the number 2 and number 3 mines being the most actively operated on into the 1920s. No date was given as to when the company eventually shut down their brick-making plant and mining operations at Coaldale. Possibly in the 1930s, as the Depression was going on, it was closed along with the Gray's brick plant as well. Some years later, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad removed all of its tracks just past Sibleyville on the Langley branch line from the Langley Junction, leading to the old Coaldale brick plant and the old Langley coal mines. After the purchase of the Sibleyville brick plant in 1917, the Birmingham Clay Products Company expanded facilities by adding additional brick press machines and building additional drying kilns. This allowed for some 75,000 bricks to be produced daily. In the early 1920s, the company received large brick contracts from the Alabama Power Company for construction of various electrical facilities located around the state. Birmingham Clay Products was also contracted to supply all of the bricks for the construction of Alabama Power Company's new 16-story office building in downtown Birmingham that would be located at the corner of 6th Avenue and 18th Street North. The new Art Deco office building was completed in 1925 with bricks made from Sibleyville. In 1928, the company purchased the McMillan Clay Products Company, located in North Birmingham, and also began expanding facilities there to increase brick production. During this time, the Sibleyville plant was still operating at the Langley coal mines, which were located some 2 miles south on L&N's Langley branch line. It is not exactly known just when these coal mines located at Langley were finally shut down. The Sibleyville brick plant of the Birmingham Clay Company continued operating, filling large orders for commercial and residential use up to somewhere around 1946, when the plant was finally closed down. It is also unclear how long the plant stayed abandoned before being razed. In the 1950s, L&N removed all the remaining tracks and rails from the Littleton branch line. The Dixie Fire Brick Company was formed in Jefferson County, Alabama, and incorporated in 1930. The company was formed with the purpose of acquiring the Interstate Brick and Tile Company, which had been organized in Birmingham in 1923. The company had built a small brick plant at Kimberly with 2 round brick kilns. The plant had been idle since 1927, when the Central Alabama Coal Company closed its Kimberly coal mines nearby, depriving the brick plant of needed resources to operate. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Warrior Mineral Branch Line Division had to rehabilitate a spur line at Kimberly that had originally been built for the Central Coal Company's Kimberly coal mines dating back to 1906. The spur line had stayed in operation when the Central Alabama Coal Company took over and then was succeeded by the Sloss-Sheffield Steel and Iron Company. The spur line had not been in operation since 1927, when Sloss closed the Kimberly mines down. The company had erected 5 additional large round brick kilns and began upgrading the plant with new machinery. A new high-capacity grinding mill operation was set up for fire clay to make high-temperature bricks. More specifically, to market types of ladle bricks for the steel industry, which was most prominent in the Birmingham district. Other types of ceramic bricks would be used for commercial and residential use. When the brick plant became fully operational, it could process some 40,000 bricks for daily output. To obtain the necessary high quality fire clay, the Dixie Fire Brick Company would open up and operate several coal mine sites just up the road around the city of Warrior. The coal mines would operate on the Black Creek seam that contained 18 inches on average of deposits of rich fire clay located just beneath the 2 to 3 foot coal seam. The fire clay, when extracted from the coal mines, would be hauled by truck back to its Kimberly brick plant where it would be processed. The Dixie fire brick also utilized kaolin or China white clay that came by rail from a company-owned clay pit in Washington County, Georgia, to be added to the brick making process, resulting in cream-colored type fire bricks. In the late 1930s, the company contracted with L.S. Rogers to open up and operate the Dixie coal mine just above the Locust Fork River. With no rail connection, this was classified as a truck mine. By 1940, the company had opened up their own coal mine located just west of the city of Warrior. The new Dixie No. 2 mine was situated at the bottom of a steep plateau just above Cane Creek. It was set up as a drift mine with a modern Jeffrey ventilation fan system that ran parallel to the main drift mine haulage way. The mine was completely serviced by electrical power along with lighting inside the mine. Electrically operated pneumatic drills and drag scrapers were listed as some of the mining equipment used. A small office and miner's bathhouse was located near the main mine entrance. Some 40 miners were employed working at the No. 2 mine. Extracted fire clay from the No. 2 mine was hauled by truck back to the brick plant at Kimberly. In 1945, the Dixie Fire Brick Company began developing an abandoned slope mine dating back to 1915 that was first operated by the Tuscaloosa Coal Company. The Dixie Fire Brick Company had acquired some 2,500 acres in and around the city of Warrior of basically undeveloped coal land. The new slope mine was located just north of the Locust Fork River near the bottom of a steep ravine. The slope mine was developed past the Jefferson coal seam to reach the thin Black Creek seam, which held the fire clay seam just below it. New facilities were built that included the cable hoist house, bathhouse, and coal loading tipple with a minecart rotary dump. The Montgomery Coal Washer Company of Birmingham eventually installed 2 state-of-the-art coal washers next to the tipple. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad built the new spur line from its main Warrior branch line to reach the new mine. The new Dixie Fire Brick No. 4 mine opened in 1946 with some 40 to 50 miners being employed at the mine. Coal from the company's No. 2 mine was trucked to the No. 4 mine, where it was dumped into a coal hopper and eventually would be sent to the coal washing system. After the coal went through an intensive washing system, it was loaded onto waiting L&N rail cars for transportation to waiting customers. The Black Creek coal was deemed excellent coking coal, so it was most likely transported to Alabama Byproduct Corporation's large coke plant located at Tarrant, just northeast of Birmingham. The extracted fire clay from the No. 4 mine was transported by truck down to the company's brick plant at Kimberly for processing. Also located around the site of the company's No. 4 mine were 600 acres of well-developed farmland whereby a large herd of cattle was maintained for study in better farm and livestock management for the Cattlemen's Association. In 1944, the Slough-Sheffield Steel and Iron Company decided to reopen its Kimberly No. 4 coal mine that was located at the end of the spur line just past the Dixie Fire Brick Company's plant. Sloss briefly reopened the nearby Kimberly No. 2 mine for a short time to extract any available coal that was left before closing it. The Kimberly No. 4 mine was kept open until 1955 when it was finally closed down. By the late 1950s, Dixie Fire Brick had added another brick kiln to their plant to accommodate customer demand. The company had closed their No. 2 coal mine by this time, with the No. 4 still operating. In 1959, the Dixie Fire Bricks Company had merged with the A.P. Green Refractories Company out of Mexico, Missouri. By 1960, the Dixie Fire Brick Company closed down their No. 4 coal mine near Warrior. The company would rely on obtaining clay from locations in Georgia that they owned or leased. In 1968, the plant was shut down and the Dixie Fire Bricks Company was dissolved. Some years later, L&N removed the spurline rails and tracks at the same time they were dismantling the entire Warrior Mineral branch line. Today, the site where the plant was located is on private property. At least one of the original brick kilns has been preserved by the property owner. The Bibby Coal, Shale, and Clay Company was formed and incorporated in Jefferson County, Alabama in 1916. The new company acquired the existing brick plant of the Adams Coal and Clay Company that had begun operating in 1909 near Littleton, some 22 miles from Birmingham. The plant was located in the far northwest section of Jefferson County and situated near the west bank of the Locust Fork River. The brick plant had been built adjacent to the Southern Railway spur line that had already begun servicing mines of the Wiggins and Little Warrior coal companies. The spur line went underneath the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Cane Creek branch line. The Bibby family had long established ties to the area and had been involved in coal mining in the Littleton area dating back to the 1890s, providing coal on contract for the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company of Birmingham. Several new large round high temperature brick kilns were built alongside the existing plant. A new brick making press machine was installed along with new drying houses. The Wiggins Coal Company mine that was located nearby at the end of the spur line with its own coal rail tipple was eventually acquired by the Bibby Coal, Shale, and Clay Company. The Bibby mine had been developed as a slope mine operating on the narrow Black Creek coal seam. It was soon discovered that just below the coal seam was a 4 to 5 feet thick rich fire clay seam. A large shale bank was also located nearby on the property that would provide the necessary material for high quality brick production. As with smaller brick manufacturing companies operating, it was necessary to employ distributing agents to sell their line of manufactured brick products as a way to increase sales and production. In the 1920s, the Bibby brick plant began experimenting with producing what was called clinker bricks, made from high temperature kilns. The bricks were more dense in weight with irregular shapes and darker in appearance. With further experimentation from different types of clay, other clinker bricks were produced in a wide variety of colors. These type bricks became widely popular in the Birmingham district for the construction of commercial buildings and new brick home construction. The new type of bricks became known as Bibby clinkers. In several periodicals of the time, The company would often be listed as the Bibby Brick and Tile Company for unknown reasons. It is not exactly known just how many bricks were produced at the Bibby plant on a daily or monthly basis. However, possibly somewhere between 20 to 30,000 bricks were produced daily. The Bibby Coal, Shale, and Clay Company would stay in continuous operation until 1965, when it was finally closed down and the company dissolved. In the late 1980s, the Drummond Coal Corporation would open and operate their new Bibby coal mine for several years that was located just west of the old Bibby brick plant and coal mine. In early 1901, while on a business trip to Birmingham, Lubbock L. Stephenson, who operated the large brick manufacturing plant in Elberton, Georgia, visited a site some 4 miles west of Leeds and 12 miles east of Birmingham. Situated along the Southern Railway just north of the Cahaba River, Mr. Stephenson viewed the beautiful rolling landscape and, with careful geological scrutiny, discovered beneath the soil were vast seams of seemingly unlimited high quality shale and other minerals that would be perfect for shale brickmaking. Upon returning to Georgia, Mr. Stephenson made arrangements to initially purchase some 500 acres of land and file letters of incorporation with the state of Alabama for the new Stephenson Brick Company. In the process, Mr. Stephenson sold his brick plant and business in Elberton, Georgia. He returned at the end of 1901 and, with a large working capital, proceeded to build his new brick plant on the recently purchased property. During the building, Mr. Stephenson, realizing that there was already a town in Alabama with his last name, he decided to name the plant and community along with the rail depot after his first name, Lovick. The initial startup cost of building the new brick plant was $50,000. Southern Railway, only too happy to have additional future business on their line, built 2 rail sidings to the plant. Initially, several large round draft kilns were constructed, along with the latest brick-making machinery that was installed. Large drying buildings were erected, as well as numerous homes for plant workers and their families. A commissary, as well as a medical office and school, would later be opened. The shale pits were developed just north of the plant, with 2 parallel rail lines built that would carry shale carts from the pits to an incline, whereby the carts would be pulled by cable hoist to the top and deposited into a gyratory shale crusher for processing before being sent to the main plant. A large Marion electric shovel would later be employed to work the ever expanding shale pit. In order to obtain much needed clay for the manufacturing of bricks, Mr. Stephenson contracted with several companies in Alabama and Georgia to have clay shipped by rail to the Lovick plant. When the Stephenson Brick Company opened their new brick plant in 1926 near Cordova in Walker County, large amounts of clay would be shipped by rail from the company's new coal and clay mine to the plant at Lovick. Shortly after the plant opened, it was producing some 40,000 bricks per day. By 1905, 10 large round draft kilns measuring 29 feet in diameter had been built that resulted in some 75,000 bricks per daily output. Over the years, with ever increasing brick orders, the Lovick brick plant went through multiple expansions, increasing in size to accommodate the many different types of bricks that were being produced and marketed. In late 1920, Mr. Stephenson, wishing to expand his business, purchased the Childersburg Brick Company, located in Talladega County. The Childersburg Brick Company had been in operation since 1904 and produced very fine qualities of bricks for commercial and residential use. The plant had 13 large round draft kilns with a capacity for over 1 million bricks per month. Located nearby on the 100-acre property was a 10-foot clay seam just below the surface. For a number of years, extracted clay from the company's Childersburg property was also shipped by rail for use at the Lovick plant. By 1925, a total of 20 large round draft kilns had been built at Lovick, with the plant having an annual capacity of 30 million bricks being produced. Numerous buildings in Birmingham, including 8 of the tallest buildings in downtown, were designed with face brick from the Lovick plant. Many residential design neighborhoods, such as Mountain Terrace and Redmont Park homes, were also built with designed bricks from the Lovick plant. In 1926, the Stephenson Brick Company would open a new brick plant near Cordova in Walker County. By December 1926, the Stephenson Brick Company would also acquire the Decatur Brick Corporation, located in the north of the state in Morgan County, near the Tennessee River. The Decatur Brick Corporation had encountered financial difficulties from outside state financing in Georgia and had to enter into court receivership, being managed by a trustee. The company, under court supervision, had managed to still operate and expand plant facilities before being purchased by Mr. L. Stephenson. By 1928, the Stephenson Brick Company plant at Lovick would build additional large round draft kilns, bringing the total number to 25. During this period, the company had established itself as one of the premier brick manufacturing companies in the southeastern United States. Such a wide variety of specialized bricks were manufactured and marketed, it would be difficult to list them all. The company would continue to operate the Lovick plant over the decades after the passing of Mr. L. Stephenson in 1948 as president of the company. Members of the Stephenson family took over management of the company, which continued to operate. The Stephenson family would eventually sell off and close the other plants while keeping the Lovick plant in operation. In 1972, the Stephenson family finally closed the Lovick plant and henceforth dissolved the company. Today, the area where the plant in the community of Lovick was located is the site of several industrial companies. In early 1925, the Stephenson Brick Company, working in cooperation with several businessmen in Cordova, located in Walker County, made an initial purchase of a large tract of land some 2 miles west of the city of Cordova. Geological surveys that included several old abandoned coal mines in the area discovered a rich seam of fire clay averaging some 4 feet in thickness. The clay seam ran just under the Mount Carmel coal seam, averaging nearly 3 feet in thickness. The Mount Carmel seam was part of the famous Mary Lee coal seam that covered a large section of the Great Warrior coalfield. Around $250,000 to $300,000 was invested in the construction of the new brick plant that, when finished, would employ some 250 to 300 local Walker County men. The Bessemer Engineering Company of Bessemer, Alabama, was awarded the contract of constructing the new brick plant that, when finished, could initially produce some 60,000 bricks per day on average. Before initial construction of the plant, an entire hillside had to be leveled down and graded before the facilities could be built. While the main brick plant was under construction, the company developed a rail spur line with sidings leading from the Southern Railway main line to the brick production platform and the new coal tipple being erected that was connected to the coal and clay mine. The coal mine was developed as a slope that would reach the Mount Carmel coal seam and fireclay seam beneath it. An electric cable hoist was installed that would raise and lower the mine carts from the mine to the coal tipple. A separate rail line was built from the coal tipple to the clay dump and crusher situated just north of the main brick plant. Alabama Power was contracted to build a substation near the plant to connect with their main power transmission lines running from Cordova. These electrical transmission lines came from the Alabama Power Company's new Gorgas steam plant, located 8 miles south on the Mulberry Fork of the Warrior River. The construction of 8 large 29-foot diameter brick kilns at the plant would be followed shortly after its opening with an additional 4 more, totaling 12 kilns in operation just to keep up with the demand. The plant, when operating, would specialize in several types of design and common bricks, complemented with glazed and buff bricks. The coal mine was equipped with the latest Goodman coal cutting machines and Sanford Day mine carts. A Jeffrey ventilation fan was installed next to the manway entrance to provide fresh ventilation into the mine. Additional property was purchased that would allow for some 1,600 acres to be further developed for underground mining. A 330-foot rock slope was developed to get to the coal seam that was located some 300 feet below the surface. When the new Cordova brick plant opened in July 1926, there were already contracts in place by several companies. By 1927, 4 additional kilns had been built, bringing the total number to 15 in use. An average of 40,000 bricks per day were being produced. Some 14 rail cars filled with Cordova bricks were being transported by Southern Railway every day. In addition to the daily shipments of bricks, rail cars loaded with processed clay were transported to the Lovick plant for brickmaking purposes. In the winter of 1934 and 35, the Cordova plant was shut down for several months due to a large surplus of bricks in stock, along with a decrease in commercial and residential construction. By March of 1935, the Cordova plant was back in full operation. One of the larger contracts filled by the Stephenson Brick Company in 1935 was supplying 600,000 bricks for a government contract in Huntsville, Alabama. 100,000 bricks from the contract came from the Cordova plant. During this period, the Stephenson Brick Company had sold their Decatur and Childersburg plants and concentrated on further development of their existing plants located at Lovick and Cordova. By the 1940s, the Stephenson Brick Company's Cordova plant was the third largest employer in Cordova in terms of payroll generated for the city, along with being one of the largest taxpayers for Walker County. The company's Cordova plant operations were also unique in that it was the only plant that had received natural gas via an underground pipeline route from the state of Louisiana, which was used in the kilns to bake brick and tile with the color baked into the product. The Stephenson Brick Company was making 50 different standard shapes and sizes of brick and tile, as well as over 500 special designs and sizes. In January of 1948, Mr. Lovick L. Stephenson, who was the founder and president of the company, passed away. Members of the Stephenson family who took over to manage the company were later approached by the National Fireproofing Corporation of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to open negotiations for the purchasing of the Cordova brick plant, mine, and whole property. After many months of negotiations, the Stephenson family sold their Cordova brick operations and property to the National Fireproofing Corporation by July of 1949. Shortly after the acquisition, the National Fireproofing Corporation, or commonly known as NATCO, began selling off the remaining stock of the Stephenson Company's brick brands to make way for their products. The workforce was increased to 125, with a number of those being additional miners to expand the coal clay mine underground workings, whereby more clay could be extracted. The mine was completely mechanized with a continuous miner, loading machine, and mobile shuttle car. Within 1 year, the plant was producing some 3,000 tons of structural clay tile. 21 different types of bricks were also being produced that included different types of glazed bricks that were used in residential and commercial buildings. By 1956, NATCO's Cordova plant had increased production by 300% that provided Walker County with a $1 million payroll. The Cordova plant's products became so widely used within Walker County for new home and business construction that many of these buildings and homes located within Walker County are still intact and in use present day. The NATCO brick plant and mine at Cordova stayed in continuous operation until somewhere around 1968 they were finally shut down and abandoned. All machinery from the plant and mine were eventually removed, and the large round kilns were raised, leaving only some of the exhaust stacks still standing. Today, the site is under private ownership, and it is said that the mine is still used infrequently to extract quantities of coal and clay that can be still found in the underground workings. The Wilpicoba Clay Works was originally formed in Atlanta, Georgia around 1906 to 1907. The owners of the company, after much research, decided to build a brick plant next to the recently finished Seaboard Airline Railway that had just opened service between Atlanta and Birmingham. The site they chose was located about 1 mile east of the little town of Ragland, located in St. Clair County. The distance to Birmingham was 47 miles to the west, and Atlanta, Georgia, some 103 miles to the east. The name they chose, Wilpicoba, was a derivative of 3 letters each from the last names of the owners. The new brick plant was built at the base of a large ridgeline that contained enormous deposits of fine shale that was ideal for paving brick, block, and building brick. A gravity incline railroad was built running from the top of the ridgeline where the shale would be blasted off and excavated. Mine carts loaded with shale would be lowered down the incline towards the plant, where they crossed over a 40-foot high wooden trestle spanning Trout Creek towards the brick plant, whereby the shale would be deposited into giant holding bins. The shale would later be crushed and processed into bricks and heated later in the kilns. The nearby Trout Creek would supply all the necessary water to run the boilers that provided steam converted to electricity. Coal that was also needed for the boiler plants came from the coal mines that were being operated just to the west of the town of Ragland. The company was also able to acquire the needed clay from a 40-acre section located on the plant property. Later, several coal seams would also be located on the property, whereby the plant would be totally self-sufficient to power the brick plant. Also within the property was found an abundance of fine sand that was deemed to be excellent for brick making. By 1909, with the plant in full operation, it was turning out some 25,000 bricks per day for shipment. A large concern that became readily apparent to the owners was that they had to rely on one railroad carrier, that being the Seabourn Airline Railway, that could set higher than normal freight transportation rates that made it very difficult to fill large orders and still turn a profit. During this period, the United States government began doing surveys along the Coosa River, which was located just 1 mile south of the Wilpicoba Clay Works, to build a multiple lock system down to the Alabama River that would connect with the Mobile River, leading to the Gulf of Mexico. Several locks had already been constructed further north on the Coosa River years before, but were inadequate in size for large barges. Owners of the company wholeheartedly endorsed the idea of additional locks needed to accommodate the large commercial barge traffic that was needed. The company had recently filled an order for 400,000 paving bricks for the city of Bradenton, Florida, and it just barely broke even after paying all the freight rates. The company had also lost out on a bid of a $5 million paving brick order for the city of Jacksonville, Florida, due to the cost of their bricks, with added high freight rate charges to the city. A clear navigable route for large freight barges down to the Gulf of Mexico would greatly improve sales and make their products more competitive with competing brick companies. Even though there was a passenger and steamboat service on the Coosa River, the current riverboats could not accommodate such large and heavy freight shipments. One of the biggest contracts at that time being bid on was with the government of Cuba, that had put out an order for the purchase of 10 million paving bricks, which the Wilpicoba Clay Works at Ragland was unable to offer a competitive bid due to not having favorable freight rates. The company was also not able to bid on a 1 million paved brick contract for the city of Key West, Florida, because of not being able to obtain favorable water shipping rates. In 1910, the Hall and Parker Contracting Company of Macon, Georgia, was able to acquire the Wilpicoba Clay Works plant at Ragland. The new owners changed the name of the company to the Ragland Brick Company. Before the acquisition, the plant had undergone improvements, with new machinery and kilns being added to increase production and produce different styles of bricks. The plant would have a daily capacity between 20 and 30,000 bricks output. The owners of the new recently renamed Ragland Brick Company proceeded to make further improvements and enlargements of the plant, with adding additional large round diameter kilns and drying rooms. By 1914, even though the sales were good, the company owners were not able to turn a profit and thus had to file for protection in bankruptcy court. A trustee was assigned by the court to manage the plant that was still operating while bids would be accepted to the bankruptcy court for sale of the plant. The Alphons-Custodis Chimney Construction Company of New York City, New York, having thoroughly researched the mineral and shale deposits that were in and around Ragland and making multiple inspections of the brick plant, submitted a successful bid to the bankruptcy court and was able to secure purchase of the plant facilities and the valuable property in 1917. With the company's specialty in commercial and industrial large type chimney construction, the plant was able to produce 10,000 tons of radial shale chimney block per year. These specially made bricks were used for chimney construction in the southern states. In later years, among one of the most successful bricks to be produced in the southeast was the Ragtex brand of brick, which had a rough texture to it. Along with other types of bricks, the Ragland plant by 1925 was averaging some 10 million bricks per year in sales. The Ragland brick plant would stay in continuous operation up to around 1954 when the plant was finally closed. Sometime after, the machinery was removed and the buildings and brick kilns were raised. Today, the site is completely overgrown, though many areas of the concrete floor slabs of the brick plant can still be seen. Located some 40 miles southeast from Birmingham in Talladega County, the origins of brickmaking in Sylacauga date back to 1888, when the Knight Brickyard was begun by Messrs. J. M. Knight and Jim Day. The brick plant was located a half a mile south from the town of Sylacauga and situated along the line of the Columbus and Western Railroad, which operated from Columbus, Georgia to Birmingham, Alabama. This line became part of the Central of Georgia Railway that operated between 1895 to 1963, when it was purchased by the Southern Railway, which is now part of the Norfolk Southern Railroad network. Not much information is known as to how long the small brick plant lasted, but the area became locally known as the Brickyard. In 1901, Messrs. M.J. Gregg and T.H. McMichael formed and incorporated the Alabama High Grade Brick Company and began building a large brick plant on the site of the Knight Brickyard. The owners of the new company constructed a set of drying houses and 6 large diameter down draft kilns. A large deposit of 6-foot thick fire clay was found to be nearby, which was connected to the plant by a rail tramway line. A 900-foot long spur line was also built to connect with the Central of Georgia railway line. The plant was ideally situated in that it was located just a half a mile southeast of the switch crossing of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Alabama Mineral Branch Line, which at that time operated from Gadsden, located in Etowah County to the north, to Calera, located in Shelby County to the west, where it connected to its main South and North Alabama line. Both of these rail lines would offer excellent transportation networks to get their products to market. The Alabama High Grade Brick Company was affiliated with the Jefferson Brick Company of Birmingham by way of Mr. M.J. Gregg, who was also the business secretary of that company. The Jefferson Brick Company handled all of the sales and orders at that time for the Alabama High Grade Brick Company in Sylacauga. By 1903, with the expansion of the plant and installation of the latest brick-making machinery, the company was producing some 40 to 50,000 bricks per day with an average workforce of 50 to 75 men. Orders to be filled for the new bricks had exceeded to over 1 million produced annually. Among the companies that would place orders was the Alphons-Custodis Chimney Construction Company of New York City for radial building block bricks for the construction of industrial chimneys. In addition to the company's Sylacauga-made bricks being used for new building construction within Talladega County, they were now being shipped to cities such as Birmingham, Nashville, Chattanooga, and Atlanta. In 1906, the Van Dusen brothers, who had originally hailed from New York and had operated a brick plant in that state some years before, had arrived in Sylacauga a year before looking for new business opportunities. They purchased the Alabama High Grade Brick Company and also bought out the remaining shares of the company. Within a few years, the Van Dusen brothers had increased the daily capacity of brick making to some 40,000 bricks. Additional large diameter draft kilns had been built, now totaling 11. The company would also utilize the Birmingham-based brick selling company as a representative wholesaler to further market their products for sale. The price for a load of 1,000 bricks in 1910 would average between $4.75 to between $8 to $10, depending on the style of brick. The Van Dusen brothers became very involved with the growth and promotion of products made in Sylacauga and the promotion of Talladega County. Sylacauga had become known as the Marble City due to a swath of white marble that ran through a section of Talladega County for 32 miles, measuring some 600 feet in depth. It was considered the whitest marble in the world. The city of Sylacauga was situated in the center of the marble quarry field. The Alabama High Grade Brick Company supplied bricks for the Alabama Marble Company's new facilities that operated the Gantz Quarry, located 3 miles west of the brick plant. The company also supplied the bricks for the building of Avondale Mill's large textile manufacturing plant, located over a mile north at Minion. The future Sylacauga City Hall building, as well as the city's Waterworks Reservoir Plant building, located directly across the Central of Georgia Railway's tracks, were also built using Sylacauga-made bricks. The Talladega County Courthouse and the Alabama School for the Deaf were also built utilizing Sylacauga bricks. Numerous other buildings, including schools, hospitals, and plants in Sylacauga and Talladega County, were built using bricks that were made at the Alabama High Grade Brick Company's plant. In addition to the manufacturing of bricks, the owners of the Alabama High Grade Brick Company also managed some 160 acres of land that they owned near the brick plant to harvest very fine grain. During this period, they were the largest individual owners of farmland within the city limits of Sylacauga that were harvesting oak crop, which also became a very successful revenue enterprise for the company. By 1909, the company had begun employing the use of steam shovels to operate at their clay and shale pits located near the brick plant. On one such excavation at either the shale or clay pit, the operator of the steam shovel unearthed burial relics from a Creek Indian chief. It was found that the area was the site of a burial ground for a tribe of the Creek Indians that once lived in the region. The county of Talladega and city of Sylacauga are both names derived from the Creek Indians. Whatever became of the artifacts and/or the burial ground is not known. By 1920, the Alabama High Grade Brick Company's owners had accumulated a large backstock of bricks in inventory on hand. They decided to shut down operations for about a year to sell off the large inventory. In 1921, with their inventory exhausted, The plant was restarted to fill new orders that were being placed by companies for construction of new buildings going up in Sylacauga and that of Talladega County. In 1922, the name of the Alabama High Grade Brick Company was changed to that of the Sylacauga Brick Company to better reflect a local brick company in the city and for the county. The name change was a given since most folks in town and the county always referred to the bricks made at the plant as Sylacauga Bricks. In 1928, the Sylacauga Brick Company was able to secure a large contract for some 3 million common type bricks by the new Bemis Brothers Bag Company textile mill that would be built just south of the city of Talladega. The new mill was to be situated adjacent to the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Alabama Mineral Branch Line, which ran between Sylacauga and Talladega, a distance of 18 miles from the brick plant. L&N's freight trains would operate on a section of the Central of Georgia Railway to transport the freight cars loaded with bricks to the new plant being constructed. The new plant was completed and opened by late 1929. On March 21st, 1932, the city of Sylacauga was hit by a massive tornado that was part of a super outbreak of tornadoes that had swept across central Alabama. The tornado swept across the south section of the city along the area of Fort William Street, causing massive damage and many deaths, including the Sylacauga Brick Plant Works that was located on East Fort William Street. Damage to the brick plant was extensive in equipment, buildings, and kilns. The Sylacauga Brick Plant was rebuilt after several years and reopened in 1936. Records indicate that the plant stayed in operation on into 1970 and was closed by 1974, with the company being dissolved. Today, the site where the brick plant was once located is occupied by several small companies. The Ashby Brickworks were located in the northeast section of Bibb County, Alabama, in the town of Ashby, that was situated along the line once operated by the Selma, Rome, and Dalton Railroad, and later the East Tennessee, Virginia, and Georgia Railroad. Later, the line would be acquired by Southern Railway. The town of Ashby was some 35 miles due south of Birmingham and 7 miles south of the city of Montevallo in Shelby County, and 2 miles south of the town of Briarfield. Briarfield is most well known for the location of the Bibb Iron Works and naval furnaces, which operated during the Civil War, providing much needed iron for the Confederacy. The first known information about the creation of a brick plant being operated at Ashby was in 1884 when Messrs. Earharker and Green opened a small brick-making plant near the Ashby Railroad Depot. A newspaper report on the business venture mentions a brick plant indoor yard having once been operating in the area before this. The location soon became commonly referred to as the Ashby Yards. It is unknown how long the brickworks plant stayed in operation, but no more than 2 years. The next report comes from a newspaper article from 1887 when a Mr. H. Carr from Birmingham came to the area and restarted the fire bricks work plant at Ashby by installing the latest brick-making machinery of that time period. The area around Ashby held abundant deposits of fine clay and shale to produce premium bricks. Nearby Furnace Creek would supply enough water to furnish the boiler plant needed to convert to steam power to operate the machinery. One critical item not lacking in the area was coal. The area was situated within the southern end of the Great Cahaba coalfield and was near the Montevallo coal seam, which was the most highly purchased coal in the southeast at that time. It is not known if the Ashby Firebrick Works operated their own coal mine, but it would have made more practical sense to purchase loads from the coal mines located near Aldrich, just a few miles north, that utilized the same rail line. For reasons not known, the new rehabilitated brickworks plant at Ashby stayed in operation for only a couple of years before shutting down and being abandoned. In 1900, the new Ashby Firebrick Works Company was formed by three businessmen, Messrs. Chair, Oakley, and Lee, with an initial investment of $5,000. A new dry house was constructed along with installing one of the largest brick-making machines at that time to be found in the southeast that could turn out some 10,000 fire bricks per day. Southern Railway, who was operating the line at this time, installed a spur line to the brick plant. Newspaper reports of that period indicated that there were in fact two different brickwork plants located near Ashby Station. It can be assumed that the new owners built a rail tramway line from the plant to the clay pit that was located about 1 mile to the southeast. An additional rail tramway line was built to the west for about 3 miles paralleling Furnace Creek. This rail line followed the old original rail line of the Bibb furnace that was operating during the Civil War. It is not known if this location was where the shale pit was in operation or a small coal mine. In March 1902, another Ashby Brick Company was formed and incorporated by Messrs. G.B. Crow and J.W. Ashby in Birmingham, with a working capital of $40,000. A newspaper article announcing the new company indicated a brick plant being operated in nearby Shelby County. This was most likely a print error, as probate records do not reveal that Ashby Brick Company had a plant located in Shelby County. One of the two brick plants between 1900 to 1909 ended up being operated by a business partnership of three men operating the Titus Firebrick Company of Ashby. No information can be derived of this company, only that it was dissolved in 1909. In 1905, several civil suits were brought forth in circuit court in Birmingham against the Ashby Firebrick Company, which resulted in a court ruling judgment in monetary damages against the company. As a result, the sheriff of Bibb County carried out the legal order and held a public auction in Ashby at the brick plant, whereby much of the brick-making machinery and steam-related engines were sold off. In 1908, the Ashby Brick Company was reorganized with a working capital of $40,000. The company also amended their charter to reflect a move of their main office from Birmingham to Ashby. With regards to the Ashby Brick Company, no further information can be found between the period of 1910 to 1917. In the first months of 1917, the American Trust and Savings Bank of Birmingham set forth a mortgage default of unpaid bonds of the Ashby Brick Company, and through probate court order seized the 250-acre property and all equipment on it. The foreclosure listing of equipment and structures was impressive. A Bucyrus steam shovel is listed along with a description of 4 large round diameter down draft kilns with a brick making capacity of 75,000 per day. The bank held a public auction in April of 1917 and sold off all of the equipment and later parceled out the lots of the property for sale that also included the water and mineral rights. In May of 1917, a new Ashby Firebreak Company was formed and incorporated by Birmingham businessmen Herbert Tutwiler, H.M. Brooks, and Lee Mackay. There is no further information on this new company or if any attempt was made to restart the brick-making operations at Ashby. A 1918 state geological report lists Ashby Bricks, but nothing else. Whether it was restarted is unknown. The company was later dissolved in 1924. Today, the site of where the Ashby Brickworks and property was once located is occupied by private homes, farms, and pasture lands. Hope everyone enjoyed this lengthy presentation on the origins and history of brickmaking in the Birmingham district. Thanks so much for watching.